Before you go, we'd love to hear from you. Tell us in the comments, where in the world are you watching from? Your stories and perspectives make this community even more special. And if this story moved you, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Tomorrow, at this very same time, we're bringing you another unforgettable story, one you won't want to miss. See you then? Karen ripped a medal off his chest. What happened next had everyone screaming. Lauren Campbell stepped out of the black luxury SUV, adjusting her designer sunglasses as she surveyed the courtyard of Buckingham Palace. The afternoon sun cast a warm glow over the grand structure, highlighting its centuries old stone facade. Tourists moved in waves, some pausing to take photos, others eagerly flipping through guidebooks. The scent of fresh flowers from the nearby gardens mixed with the city air, creating a contrast between nature and history. Lauren, however, had little interest in the rich heritage surrounding her. She huffed in irritation, checking the time on her diamond-studded watch. Unbelievable, she muttered under her breath. I specifically requested priority access. Do they expect me to stand here like everyone else? Beside her, her 16-year-old daughter, Emily, shifted uncomfortably. Dressed in a casual summer dress with sneakers, she had done her research on what to wear for a long day of sightseeing. Unlike her mother, she was excited to take in the experience, but the growing frustration in Lauren's voice made her shrink inward. Mom, maybe we should just wait like everyone else, Emily suggested hesitantly. Lauren scoffed. Absolutely not. I did not come all this way to stand in the sun like some common tourist. With that, she stepped forward, her expensive heels clicking sharply against the stone pavement. The crowd instinctively parted as she moved. Her confidence, or rather, entitlement, clearing a path. Some exchanged knowing glances, while others rolled their eyes at the all-too-familiar sight of a wealthy American demanding special treatment. Lauren's frustration escalated as she scanned the area, searching for someone, anyone, to cater to her demands. Then, her eyes landed on a figure standing rigidly near the palace gates. Dressed in the traditional red tunic and tall black bearskin hat, the royal guard remained perfectly still, unshaken by the chaos around him. A smirk played on Lauren's lips. Well, at least there's some entertainment while we wait, she said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. Emily's stomach tightened with unease. She had seen this look on her mother's face before, the one she got when she was about to make a scene. The teenager took a small step back, silently hoping her mother wouldn't do anything that would make them the center of attention. But Lauren had already set her sights on the guard, completely unaware that she was about to cross a line she could never take back. Lauren Campbell narrowed her eyes as she studied the royal guard in front of her. He was young, maybe mid-30s, with a posture so rigid he looked more like a mannequin than a real soldier. His uniform was pristine, the deep red tunic pressed to perfection, gold buttons gleaming under the sun. But what really caught her attention was the medal pinned to his chest. A small, polished piece of metal that, to her, looked like nothing more than an accessory. She smirked. Emily, come look at this, she called out, waving her daughter over. Emily hesitated. Mom, maybe we should just... Come on, Lauren insisted, already stepping closer to the guard. The crowd around them quieted slightly, sensing something was about to happen. Some turned away, not wanting to get involved, while others watched with mild curiosity. Lauren placed a manicured hand on her hip and let out a dramatic sigh. You know, I always found this whole ceremony a little outdated. All this pomp and tradition for what? It's not like they're real soldiers. A few murmurs rippled through the crowd. An older British man in a tweed jacket shot her a sharp look, but Lauren ignored him. Instead, she tilted her head and pointed at the medal on the guard's chest. That, she said with a dismissive wave, is just for show, right? Like a costume piece? The air around them shifted. A few people stiffened. Emily grabbed her mother's arm, her voice barely above a whisper. Mom, stop. But Lauren wasn't done. With a sudden movement, she reached out and grabbed the medal, her fingers curling around the cool metal. I mean, honestly, these are probably mass-produced somewhere. It's not like it actually means anything. A gasp rippled through the crowd. Someone whispered, "Oh my God." Before anyone could react, Lauren tugged. The sound of stitches snapping was small, barely audible over the chatter of tourists. but it carried like a crack of thunder in the sudden silence. Lauren lifted the medal in her hand, turning it over casually, as if inspecting a trinket from a gift shop. "See? Just a souvenir," she declared. Then, with a flick of her wrist, she tossed it to the ground. The metallic ping echoed against the stone pavement. And that's when the Royal Guard moved. For the first time in hours, the Royal Guard moved. The air in the courtyard grew thick, the weight of silence pressing down on everyone as Sergeant Ryan Mitchell, a man trained in unwavering discipline, took a deliberate step forward. His polished black boots barely made a sound against the stone pavement. But the shift in his posture sent a ripple through the crowd. Lauren Campbell froze, her smug expression flickering into something else: uncertainty. The laughter she had expected from her little stunt never came. Instead, there was only the hushed whispers of onlookers, eyes locked on the scene unfolding before them. Sergeant Mitchell's movements were slow, controlled. With measured precision, he lowered himself to one knee and reached for the discarded medal. The once pristine surface was now smeared with dust from the courtyard. A small scuff marked where Lauren's expensive heel had ground it into the stone. His gloved fingers closed around it, lifting it with the kind of reverence reserved for something sacred. A deep breath filled his chest as he turned the medal over, inspecting the damage. His face, half shadowed beneath the tall black bearskin hat, remained unreadable, but there was no mistaking the tightness in his jaw, the slight tremor in his hand. The crowd remained frozen, not daring to speak, not daring to move. Even Lauren, who never backed down from confrontation, suddenly felt the shift in energy. Something about the way the guard held that medal, the way he handled it with such quiet care, made her stomach twist. Then he stood. The movement was smooth, practiced, a soldier trained in precision. And when he finally spoke, his voice was steady, firm, carrying through the courtyard with quiet authority. "This medal," he said, holding it up so the sunlight caught its surface, "is not a souvenir." The words were calm, yet razor-sharp, slicing through the heavy silence. Lauren opened her mouth, but no sound came out. Emily clutched her arms tightly, her breath shaky. Mitchell turned the medal over in his hand once more, the weight of its history resting in his palm. His next words were quiet, but each syllable landed like a hammer. "This medal was awarded to me for valor in Helmand Province, Afghanistan, September 12, 2014. The courtyard, once filled with idle tourist chatter, was now as still as the guard had been just moments before. Lauren Campbell felt the weight of the moment pressing down on her, but for the first time in her life, she had no way to talk her way out of it. The Royal Guard, Sergeant Ryan Mitchell, stood before her, his posture rigid, his expression unreadable. The medal, now dusted off but still bearing the mark of her careless actions, rested in his white-gloved hand. He turned it slowly, letting the sunlight glint off the worn edges, his voice calm but sharp enough to cut through the thick silence. "This medal," he repeated, his tone unwavering, "was not given to me as a decoration. It was earned, not here, in a palace courtyard, but in the heat of battle, in Helmand Province, Afghanistan, September 12, 2014. Lauren's throat went dry, her heart pounded in her ears. "I was there," Mitchell continued, his eyes locked on the medal, as if he could still see the battlefield etched into its surface. "My unit was tasked with evacuating civilians before the seasonal floods. Women, children, elderly, people who couldn't run, who couldn't protect themselves." Emily swallowed hard, her fingers gripping the hem of her dress. "We were told the area was clear. Intelligence said it was safe. They were wrong." The weight of those words settled over the crowd like a thick fog. The first attack came before we could even react. 3 of our vehicles were hit. Radio contact was lost. We were stranded under fire with 23 wounded civilians and only 2 medics. His jaw tightened. The second wave took our medics. Someone in the crowd let out a sharp breath, a veteran perhaps, recognizing the brutal reality behind his words. "I had basic combat medical training. It wasn't enough, but it had to be. For 3 days we held our position. 3 days of tending to the wounded, rationing what little supplies we had, listening to gunfire echo through the hills, knowing help was hours, sometimes minutes, too late." Lauren's vision blurred, not from tears, she never cried, but from the sheer force of what she was hearing. "The youngest," Mitchell murmured, his fingers tracing a faint scratch on the medal's edge, "was a little girl, maybe 7. Shrapnel tore through her arm. She never cried. She just held my hand and translated for me when my pashto failed. Lauren couldn't breathe. When the helicopters finally came, we got 18 people out. He paused. 18 out of 23. The unspoken truth hit harder than any accusation. For the first time, Lauren Campbell had nothing to say. Sergeant Ryan Mitchell stood tall, his grip tightening around the metal as the weight of his words settled over the silent courtyard. His gaze, steady and unflinching, locked onto Lauren Campbell. But there was no anger in his eyes, only something deeper, something heavier. Lauren, for the first time in years, felt small. Mitchell turned the medal over in his palm, his voice unwavering. This medal is not just mine. It belongs to the men who didn't make it home, to Lieutenant James Collins, who gave his life covering our evacuation, to Corporal Reed, Specialist Martinez, and Private First Class Williams. They died so others could live. Emily let out a shaky breath, her hands trembling at her sides. She looked at her mother, but Lauren's face had lost all color. Her perfectly manicured fingers twitched, grasping at the diamond bracelet on her wrist as if it could anchor her. Mitchell lifted the medal higher, letting the light catch the engraved words on the back. My family has served in the military for 5 generations. My great-grandfather fought in World War I. My grandfather landed on the beaches of Normandy. My father served in the Falklands. And now I stand here because of them. Lauren swallowed hard, a lump forming in her throat. This isn't a souvenir. It isn't a prop for tourists to gawk at, Mitchell continued. His voice didn't rise, but it didn't need to. Every syllable carried the weight of history, of sacrifice, of lives lost. It's a symbol of service, of duty, of the price people pay so that others don't have to. The courtyard remained still. Even the usual hum of tourists had disappeared. Parents held their children a little closer. A veteran in the crowd straightened his posture, his jaw tight. Lauren finally found her voice, but it was small, weak. I didn't realize, she stammered. Mitchell's expression didn't change. Lauren swallowed, her throat dry. I'm sorry, she whispered. The words felt foreign, like she had never truly meant them before. I didn't understand. Mitchell didn't respond. Instead, with the same deliberate precision he had shown all his life, he turned, securing the medal back onto his uniform, pressing it firmly into place. Then, without another word, he resumed his post. Lauren stepped forward, desperate to say something, to fix what she had broken. But before she could, Emily gently touched her arm. Mom, she said softly, he's back on duty. It's over. Lauren looked at her daughter, then back at Mitchell. He stood motionless once more, his gaze fixed forward, as if she had never existed. 2 palace security officers appeared at her side. Ma'am, one said firmly, please come with us. This time, Lauren didn't argue. She didn't demand special treatment. She didn't say a word. As she walked away, escorted past the silent crowd, Emily followed behind her, tears streaking her face. For the first time in her life, Lauren Campbell had been humbled. And she knew, some things could never be undone. This story is more than just an encounter at Buckingham Palace. It's a powerful lesson about respect, sacrifice, and the weight of history. It makes us ask ourselves, how often do we take things for granted? How many symbols, traditions, and honors do we overlook, not realizing the deep meaning behind them? We want to hear from you. Have you ever witnessed a moment where someone's perspective completely changed? Have you ever misjudged a situation only to realize later how much more there was beneath the surface? Share your thoughts in the comments. And let's take a moment to appreciate those who serve, whether in the military, in our communities, or in ways we don't always see. Their sacrifices deserve recognition, not just in medals, but in the respect we show. Tell us where you're watching from and what this story meant to you. Your voice matters, and your perspective might just resonate with someone else watching. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications. Tomorrow, we'll be sharing another unforgettable story. You won't want to miss it. See you then.